While Bitterbuck is granted a final meeting with his family, Paul and the rest of the group begin making arrangements in the auditorium, setting up the electric chair in preparation for his impending execution. With the assistance of the prison's elderly janitor, Toot Toot, they conduct a rehearsal. Paul specifically instructs Percy to observe and learn while the rest of the guards ready the electric chair. One of the guards educates Percy about the significance of placing a damp sponge on the prisoner's head before securing the cap with the electrodes. This step ensures that the electric current passes directly through the head, facilitating a smoother execution process. During the night, Bitterbuck is made ready for his execution. In their final conversation, he shares with Paul his fondest memory and questions whether repentance for one's crimes can lead them back to the time when they were most content. Paul expresses his belief in exactly that notion. Brutus takes charge of Bitterbuck's execution, which proceeds relatively uneventfully, albeit with the need for 2 electrical jolts before Bitterbuck's heart ceases beating. Subsequently, Paul confronts Percy about his new job opportunity, encouraging him to seize it now that he has witnessed an execution. However, Percy reveals his desire to be out front, to be in charge of overseeing an inmate's execution, before he departs from his current position. The following day, the inmate named Dell skillfully tracks down the mouse once again, affectionately christening it with the endearing name Mr. Jingles and attempting to tame it. Impressively, the mouse performs a trick by fetching a spool of thread. The other guards, including Percy, surprisingly support Dell's decision to keep Mr. Jingles as a pet. Percy even suggests finding a cigar box for the mouse to sleep in. Meanwhile, Paul has another meeting with Warden Howe, who informs him about the impending arrival of a new inmate named William Wharton aka Wild Bill. Wild Bill is notorious for having killed 3 individuals during a robbery. Howe, visibly emotional, reveals that his wife Melinda has received devastating news from doctors. She has a tumor in her brain the size of a lemon. The tumor is virtually inoperable and will ultimately prove fatal. During that night, Paul experiences intensified discomfort from his urinary infection, enduring nearly constant pain. He plans to visit the doctor the following day, once the new inmate has been brought in. Percy and Harry are dispatched to retrieve Wild Bill from the mental hospital, where he appears to be in a trance-like state, likely due to medication. However, as soon as Wild Bill enters the mile, he abruptly snaps out of his apparent stupor, revealing that he had feigned his drug-induced condition. Wild Bill launches a surprise attack on the guards, swiftly incapacitating Paul by delivering a powerful blow to his groin. Dean comes dangerously close to being strangled, while Percy is paralyzed with shock, unable to intervene despite Paul's desperate pleas for assistance. Eventually, Brutus arrives and manages to subdue Wild Bill, removing him from the scene. Paul urges the others to report the incident and seek medical attention before he takes charge of the mile. As soon as they depart, Paul collapses in agony. At this moment, John Coffey requests a conversation with Paul. Mustering great effort, Paul approaches John's cell, but instead of speaking, John firmly places his hand over Paul's groin. John maintains his grip for several seconds, during which the lights suddenly flare brightly. Eventually, he releases Paul, coughing and gasping before emitting a cloud of tiny spores resembling gnats, which quickly dissipate into the air. Paul, perplexed by what has transpired, questions about the occurrence, to which John can only reply, "I helped." Overwhelmed by exhaustion, John drifts off to sleep. Later, when Paul visits the washroom, he realizes that he no longer feels any pain whatsoever. John Coffey's act of compassion has miraculously healed Paul's infection. Upon returning home, Paul experiences an overwhelming sense of rejuvenation, spending the night making love to his wife with newfound vitality. The following morning, Paul calls in sick for work but instead heads into town to meet with Bert Hammersmith, John Coffey's former public defender who presided over his trial. Paul expresses his skepticism regarding Coffey, no longer believing that a man with such kindness and gentleness could be responsible for such a heinous crime. However, Hammersmith remains resolutely convinced of Coffey's guilt and draws a comparison between John and a dog that inexplicably attacked his own son. On the following day, Paul offers John a freshly baked loaf of cornbread as a token of appreciation for Coffey's assistance. Coffey graciously shares the cornbread with Dell and Mr. Jingles, but intentionally excludes Wild Bill, who openly exhibits racist behavior. This exclusion incites his fury, leading him to unleash his anger on the guards over the subsequent days. He urinates on Harry's shoes and spews the chocolate filling from a moon pie all over Brutus. In response, the guards employ a fire hose to catch Wild Bill off guard, subsequently restraining him in a straitjacket and relocating him to the padded room. Despite Wild Bill's occasional promises to behave, the padded room becomes a frequent residence for him during this period. The looming execution of Dell draws near, prompting the guards to have a discussion with him regarding the upcoming event. Dell's primary concern revolves around the fate of his beloved companion, Mr. Jingles. Brutus proposes the idea of sending the mouse to a magical place called Mouseville, in Florida. However, before making such arrangements, they believe Dell should put on a show with Mr. Jingles for the prison staff.